The eviction notice came on a Tuesday, taped to the apartment door like a death sentence written in legal letterhead. Maya Rodriguez stood in the hallway of the building she called home for 3 years, her son's hand tight in hers, and read the words that confirmed what she'd been dreading for months. 30 days to vacate. Past due balance, $4,847. No exceptions. Ethan tugged at her sleeve, his 7-year-old voice cutting through the fog of panic. "Mama, what does it say?" She folded the paper carefully, tucking it into her purse beside the stack of other bills she couldn't pay. Medical debt from his asthma treatments. Credit cards maxed out buying groceries. The car payment she'd missed twice. "It says we need to figure some things out, baby." The apartment behind that locked door contained everything they owned. Ethan's twin bed with the rocket ship sheets. Her grandmother's quilt, the only thing she had left from family who'd all passed before she turned 20. The small desk where Ethan did homework, covered in drawings of stars and planets and spacecraft he dreamed of building someday. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Brandon, her ex-husband, escalating from annoyance to threat in the way he always did when he wanted something. "Court date is Friday. My lawyer says you're in violation of the custody agreement. Unstable housing. I'm filing for full custody. You had your chance." Maya's throat tightened. Unstable housing. The words felt like knives. She'd been working 2 jobs since the divorce. Morning shift at the diner, evening shift cleaning office buildings. 60 hours a week that still weren't enough to keep them afloat in a city where rent climbed faster than wages ever could. Ethan pressed closer against her leg, sensing the tension even if he couldn't name it. At 7, he'd already learned to read her moods, to stay quiet when the air felt heavy, to ask for less than he needed, because asking for more made her face crumble in ways that scared him. "Are we going to be okay?" His voice was so small. She knelt down, meeting his eyes, brown like hers, but with his father's sharp intelligence that made teachers praise him and other kids avoid him for being different. "We're going to figure it out. I promise." The promise felt hollow. She'd made that same promise 6 months ago when Brandon left for his 23-year-old paralegal. Made it again when she lost her full-time job at the insurance company due to restructuring. Made it every time Ethan's inhaler ran empty and she had to choose between his breathing and their electricity. They rode the bus to her sister's apartment in Queens, the only family she had left. Carla opened the door with the exhausted patience of someone who'd already heard this story before. "How bad?" 30 days. And Brandon's going for custody. Carla's 1-bedroom apartment already housed her, her husband, and their 2 kids in bunk beds. There was no room here. They both knew it. But Carla pulled them inside anyway, settled Ethan with her daughters in front of the TV, and poured coffee that was more comfort than caffeine. "You could fight him," Carla said, not believing it even as she spoke. "Get a lawyer." "With what money?" Maya's laugh came out bitter. "He's got his firm's legal team on retainer. I've got nothing. You've got Ethan. The courts favor mothers. The courts favor stability. He's got a 3-bedroom house in Westchester, a 6-figure salary, and a fiancé who doesn't work 60-hour weeks. What do I have? An eviction notice and debt that won't stop growing." The truth sat between them like a third person at the table. Maya was drowning. "I've been drowning for months. And at some point, staying afloat stopped being possible, and you just had to decide how to go under with the least damage." Carla's phone buzzed with a reminder. "I have to pick up the girls from school." She hesitated. "You can stay here tonight. Maybe a few days until..." "Until what?" "Until I magically find an apartment I can afford? Until money appears from nowhere." Maya stood, already regretting the sharpness in her voice. "I'm sorry. I know you'd help if you could." "I would. You know I would." They hugged at the door, both of them pretending this wasn't goodbye to something neither could name. Maya collected Ethan, who'd fallen asleep on the couch between his cousins, and carried him to the bus stop even though her arms ached and her back screamed from the double shift she'd worked yesterday. The envelope arrived 2 days later, forwarded from 3 previous addresses. Maya almost threw it away, assuming it was another collection notice. But the return address stopped her. Whitmore and Associates, Estate Law, Horizon Falls, New Mexico. She opened it standing in the apartment. She had 26 days left to occupy. Inside, a single-page letter on expensive letterhead. Dear Ms. Rodriguez, we represent the estate of Dr. Helena Vasquez, deceased August 14th of this year. Our records indicate you are her sole surviving relative, granddaughter through her daughter, Isabella Rodriguez, deceased 2009. Dr. Vasquez's will bequeath to you her property at 4700 Starview Ridge Road, Horizon Falls, New Mexico, along with all contents therein. The property is an astronomical observatory, built in 1987, currently non-operational but structurally sound. Please contact our office to arrange transfer of deed and property access. Sincerely, Jonathan Whitmore, ESQ. Maya read it 3 times before the words assembled into meaning. Her grandmother. She had barely any memory of Helena, a stern woman who'd visited once when Maya was 5, who'd argued with her mother in rapid Spanish, who'd left and never returned. Her mother had refused to speak about her. After that, and when Isabella died of cancer when Maya was 19, she'd taken whatever family history existed to her grave. Now that same grandmother had left her property, an observatory, in New Mexico. Ethan came out his room, backpack dragging on the floor. What's that? I think. Maya's voice caught. I think your great-grandmother left us something. Like treasure. His eyes lit up with the kind of hope only 7-year-olds could muster from a single sentence. I don't know, baby. Maybe just a building. But it's ours. The word ours hung in the air. After months of not ours, of past due, of insufficient funds, the simple possession felt revolutionary. She called the number on the letterhead. Jonathan Whitmore answered with the crisp efficiency of someone billing by the minute. Yes, the property was legally hers. No, there were no outstanding debts or liens. Yes, she could take possession immediately. The observatory had been abandoned for 12 years, since Helena's death, waiting for next of kin to be located. What's it worth? Maya asked, already calculating if she could sell it, pay off debt, start over. Whitmore's pause told her everything. The real estate market in Horizon Falls is limited. The property is isolated, requires significant repairs, and has specialized use restrictions due to the observatory equipment. You might get $50,000 to $70,000, but it could take years to find a buyer. Not enough to solve anything. Barely enough to delay the inevitable. But it was somewhere to go. Somewhere that wasn't this apartment with its eviction countdown. Somewhere Brandon couldn't claim was unstable because it was legally, permanently hers. I want to take possession, she said. How do I get there? Carla thought she was insane. New Mexico? Maya, you've never even been west of Pennsylvania. You don't know anything about this place. I know it's mine. I know we need somewhere to live. I know Brandon's custody hearing is in 3 weeks, and if I show up homeless, I lose Ethan. So if you're going to show up living in some abandoned building in the desert, I'm going to show up with proof of property ownership, stable housing, and a plan. Maya heard the desperation in her own voice. What else do I have? The look Carla gave her was pure pity. You have me. You have family here. You have a 1-bedroom apartment with 4 people already in it. I can't ask you to take on 2 more. You're not asking. I'm offering. But they both knew it wasn't sustainable. Carla's husband worked construction, hours cut in the winter. They were one emergency away from their own crisis. Maya couldn't be the emergency that broke them. She withdrew the last $347 in her checking account, bought 2 Greyhound tickets to Albuquerque with $284 of it, packed everything that mattered into 2 duffel bags, clothes, Ethan's stuffed elephant he'd had since birth, her grandmother's quilt, the folder of documents proving who they were. Brandon called the night before they left. His voice carried the particular smugness of someone who thought they'd already won. My lawyer tells me you're planning to flee the state with my son. I'm not fleeing. I'm relocating to property I inherited. In New Mexico, where you know nobody. Where Ethan will be yanked away from his school, his friends, his father. You think a judge is going to look at that and call it stable parenting? I think a judge is going to look at legal property ownership versus eviction notices and make the obvious choice. You're delusional. His laugh was cruel. I'm filing an emergency motion to prevent you from leaving the state. By Friday, you'll have a court order keeping Ethan in New York pending the custody hearing. The line went dead. Maya stared at her phone doing the math. Today was Tuesday. If Brandon filed tomorrow, it would take at least a day to process, another day to serve her. They had maybe 48 hours before the legal system caught up. "We leave tomorrow," she told Ethan. First thing, he looked up from the homework he was struggling through, division problems that made his face scrunch in concentration. "Where are we going?" "To see the stars, baby. Your great-grandmother built a place to look at stars, and now it's ours." His whole face transformed. Ethan had loved astronomy since he was 4, could name constellations and planets with the same ease other kids named superheroes. His room was covered in glow-in-the-dark stars arranged in actual constellation patterns he'd carefully researched. An observatory? Really? Really? Can I bring my telescope? The plastic toy Brandon's parents had bought him for his 6th birthday, one of the few gifts from that side of the family that wasn't an obligation disguised as affection. "We'll bring everything important." They left at dawn, before Carla could wake up and try to talk Maya out of it, before Brandon could serve papers, before second thoughts could paralyze her into staying put and losing everything slowly instead of risking everything on a desperate gamble. The Greyhound station smelled like diesel and desperation. They weren't the only ones fleeing something. Maya recognized the look on other faces, the same calculation of nothing left to lose that she saw in her own mirror. Ethan pressed his face to the window as the bus pulled out, watching New York disappear into morning traffic. "Will we ever come back?" "I don't know, babe. What about my school?" "My teacher said we're doing a unit on the solar system next month." The guilt was a physical weight. She was uprooting him, dragging him across the country to a place neither of them had ever seen, gambling his stability on a property that might be uninhabitable. But the alternative was losing him to Brandon's sterile house and new family, watching weekend visits erode into stranger small talk until he forgot what it felt like to be her son. "We'll figure out school. Maybe there's one near the observatory, and you'll get to learn about the solar system in a real observatory." How many kids can say that? He considered this 7-year-old logic, finding the silver lining adults couldn't see. That's pretty cool. The bus rolled west through Pennsylvania, Ohio, the landscape gradually flattening into something vast and unfamiliar. They ate vending machine sandwiches and slept in awkward positions, Ethan's head on her lap, her neck cramping against the window. At a rest stop in Kansas, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She knew who it was before she opened it. "You can't run from this. Court order filed. Sheriff will be looking for you. Bring Ethan back now, and maybe I'll drop the kidnapping charges." Her hand shook. Kidnapping. He was calling it kidnapping when she was taking her own son to her own property. But that's what good lawyers did. They made truth negotiable, made desperate mothers into criminals. She deleted the text without responding, turned off her phone to preserve battery. They had one more day of travel before Albuquerque, then somehow getting from there to Horizon Falls, then finding out if this inheritance was salvation or just another disaster in a year full of them. Ethan woke as the sun set over Colorado, painting the sky in colors neither of them had names for. He watched in silence, nose pressed to glass, and Maya saw her mother in his profile, the same sharp cheekbones, the same way of going still when something beautiful demanded attention. "Mama." His voice was soft. "Are you scared?" She could lie. Should lie, probably. Protect him from adult fears he shouldn't have to carry. But they'd been through too much for dishonesty to feel like kindness anymore. "Yeah, baby. I'm scared." "Me too." He reached for her hand. "But we're doing it anyway, right?" "Right. That's what brave is." Teacher said so. Being scared but doing it anyway. She squeezed his hand, throat too tight for words. 7 years old and already teaching her courage. They'd be okay. They had to be. The universe couldn't be cruel enough to let them come this far, just to fail. The bus pulled into Albuquerque at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday, 37 hours after leaving New York. They collected their duffel bags and stepped into air that felt different, dry and cold and thin in a way that made Maya's chest tighten. Getting to Horizon Falls proved complicated. No direct bus. The cheapest option was a shuttle service that ran twice daily, But the next departure wasn't until 7 a.m. They spent the night in the bus station, Maya sitting upright with their bags clutched close while Ethan slept curled against her side. Around 3 a.m., a security guard stopped by. He looked at them with the particular exhaustion of someone who'd seen this scene too many times. "You folks got somewhere to go? Shuttle in the morning." "We're fine." He nodded, unconvinced but didn't push. Left them a card for a shelter, just in case. Maya tucked it away and tried not to think about how many steps they were from needing it. The shuttle was a converted van driven by a woman named Rosa who talked the entire 2-hour drive about Horizon Falls. Population 2,400. One grocery store. School that went K-12 in the same building. Economy based on tourism from White Sands National Park and a few mining operations in the surrounding hills. "You visiting family?" Rosa asked, eyes in the rearview mirror finding Maya's. "Inherited property. The old observatory on Starview Ridge." Rosa's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Dr. Vasquez's place. She was my grandmother." "Huh." Rosa was quiet for a long moment. "That's been empty 12 years. Whole town figured it would just rot out there. Nobody wanted it. Why not? Too far from everything. Roads barely maintained. And folks around here." She trailed off, choosing words carefully. "Let's just say they thought the doctor was peculiar. Kept to herself. Made people uncomfortable with all that talk about things nobody could see." Maya's stomach dropped. Of course. Of course there would be complications, local prejudice, reasons this inheritance was poisoned from the start. Ethan was awake now, watching the landscape change from flat desert to rolling hills studded with juniper and pinyon. What things couldn't they see? Rosa glanced back at him, her expression softening. "Stars, kid." She spent 40 years looking at stars and trying to tell people what she found. Some folks don't like being told there's more out there than what they can touch. The van climbed higher, following a two-lane highway that seemed to stretch toward mountains sharp and sudden against the horizon. Signs for Horizon Falls appeared, hand-painted wood pointing down dirt roads that disappeared into nothing. The town itself materialized around a bend like something from another era. Main Street lined with buildings that might have been charming if they weren't half abandoned. A diner with flickering neon. General store with faded awnings. Post office sharing space with what looked like a gas station from the 1970s. Rosa pulled up in front of the diner. "Whitmore's office is 3 doors down. Tell him Rosa says hello." She paused. "And welcome to Horizon Falls. People here good, mostly. Just careful with strangers. Give them time." Maya paid her the last of her cash, keeping back $20 that had to last until she figured out what came next. They stood on the sidewalk with their duffel bags, watching the van drive away, and the reality of what they'd done settled over her like snow. They were 1,800 miles from everything they knew, in a town that had thought her grandmother was crazy, about to claim a property that had been abandoned for over a decade. With $20, 2 duffel bags, and a 7-year-old who was counting on her to make this work. Ethan tugged her hand. "Mama, that sign says the diner has pie." She looked down at his hopeful face, at the trust that she'd somehow turned this into okay. "You know what? Let's get pie. Then we'll figure out the rest." The diner was nearly empty, 11 a.m. on a Thursday, between breakfast and lunch rushes. They slid into a booth by the window, and a waitress appeared almost instantly, coffee pot in hand and curiosity in her eyes. "You're new." "Not a question. Just arrived. Maya Rodriguez, and this is Ethan." "Sharon." The waitress filled Maya's cup without asking. "What brings you to Horizon Falls?" "Inherited the observatory from my grandmother, Dr. Vasquez." Sharon's expression did something complicated. "The star woman's granddaughter." "Well, that's something." She pulled out her order pad. "What can I get you?" They ordered pie, apple for Ethan, cherry for Maya, and sat in silence while the few other customers watched with barely concealed interest. Small-town dynamics Maya recognized from TV, but had never experienced. Everyone knew everyone. Strangers were events. The pie arrived, and it was perfect. Homemade crust, filling that tasted like someone's grandmother had made it with actual care. Ethan ate with the focused intensity of a kid who hadn't had anything this good in months. "Sharon." Maya kept her voice low. What can you tell me about the observatory? The waitress glanced toward the kitchen, then slid into the booth across from them. Dr. Vasquez bought that land in 1985, built the observatory herself, mostly, hired some contractors for the dome and foundation, but she designed it all. Spent 40 years up there every night looking at things. What kind of things? Stars, planets. She said she was tracking patterns, recording data, sending reports to universities. Nobody around here paid much attention until... Sharon hesitated. Until what? Until she started talking about the countdown. Maya's coffee went cold in her hands. What countdown? Last 5, 6 years before she died, she'd come into town talking about shadows counting down. Said something was coming, something she could see in the data, but nobody would believe. Got pretty intense about it. Tried to warn people, get the mayor to listen, even called some government agencies. They all thought she'd lost it. Ethan had stopped eating, listening with the intensity he gave to anything scientific. What was counting down? Sharon's smile was sad. Nobody knows, hon. She died before whatever she thought was going to happen happened. Heart attack, alone in that observatory. They found her 3 days later when she didn't show up for groceries. The image made Maya's chest ache. Her grandmother, dying alone, surrounded by equipment that showed her truths nobody believed. No family, no friends, just stars and data and warnings that fell on deaf ears. Is the property safe? Structurally? Far as I know. County inspected it after she died, looking for next of kin. Building sound. Observatory dome still works, though I doubt the telescope's been maintained. Roads rough, but passable if you got a truck. We don't have a truck. Sharon studied them. The worn duffel bags, Ethan's too small jacket, Maya's face that probably showed every mile of exhaustion they traveled. How are you planning to get out there? I was hoping to figure that out after we met with a lawyer. Whitmore's office closes at noon on Thursdays. You've got about 20 minutes. Sharon stood, pulling out her order pad and scribbling an address. Tell him Sharon sent you. And after you're done, come back here. My shift ends at 2. I'll drive you out there. You don't have to. I know. But the doctor was kind to me when my daughter was sick a few years back. Lent me money for medicine, didn't ask for it back. I'd like to help her family if I can. The kindness felt too large to hold. Maya managed a thank you that didn't convey half of what she felt, and they left the diner to find Whitmore's office. Jonathan Whitmore in person matched his voice. Efficient, professional, mildly impatient with anything that didn't move at legal speed. His office occupied the second floor above the general store, accessed by outdoor stairs that creaked with age. He had the deed ready, along with keys on a ring labeled in Helena's precise handwriting. Front door. Observatory. Storage. Generator. Generator? Maya interrupted. The property is off-grid. Solar panels for electricity, well for water, propane for heat. Dr. Vasquez was self-sufficient. He slid documents across the desk. Sign here, here, and here. Property transfers to you free and clear. No liens, no debts, no taxes owed. Why not? The question came out sharper than she intended. She owned it 40 years. There must be back taxes. She had an arrangement with the county. Provided astronomical data for their school science programs in exchange for tax exemption. The arrangement died with her, but there's no back debt. He looked up from his papers. You seem suspicious. In my experience, nothing is ever free and clear. His expression softened slightly. Dr. Vasquez prepared very carefully for this moment. She knew she had no relationship with her daughter, that you might not even know she existed. She structured everything to make it as simple as possible for you to claim what's yours. Maya signed. The pen felt heavy, like she was signing something more binding than property transfer. Signing away their ability to go back, to change their minds, to pretend this gamble could still be avoided. Whitmore handed over a manila envelope. She left this for you. Instructions, I assume, though I was instructed not to open it. The envelope was sealed with red wax, stamped with an image Maya didn't recognize. A circle with numbers around the edge like a clock. Helena's handwriting on the front, from Maya. When you're ready to listen. They left the office with keys, deed, and more questions than answers. Ethan wanted to open the envelope immediately, but Maya tucked it into her bag. Later, when we get there, Sharon was waiting at the diner as promised, keys to an old pickup truck already in hand. You ready? As we'll ever be. The drive took 40 minutes on roads that deteriorated from paved to gravel to barely maintained dirt. The landscape shifted from high desert scrub to something more mountainous, pinyon and juniper giving way to ponderosa pines as they climbed. Doctor came into town maybe once a week, Sharon said, navigating ruts and rocks with practiced ease. Always polite, always paid cash. Bought supplies, filled up propane tanks, picked up mail. Then she'd disappear back up here for another week. Some folks thought she was running from something. Others thought she was crazy. Me, I think she just liked the quiet. They crested a ridge, and there it was. The observatory sat at the summit, a white dome rising from stone and timber like something that had grown there rather than been built. The building sprawled around the base of the dome, lab space, living quarters, storage, all designed in a style that was part desert architecture, part spacecraft. Solar panels covered the roof. A satellite dish pointed skyward. Everything was weathered but intact, built to last by someone who'd expected to be here for the duration. Sharon pulled up to the front entrance and killed the engine. I'll wait while you look around. Make sure it's safe. Maya and Ethan approached the door like they were entering a tomb. The key turned smoothly. Helena had maintained the locks, even knowing she might never see her granddaughter claim this place. Inside, dust covered every surface, but beneath it was order. The front room was clearly a workspace. Desk, filing cabinets, bookshelves full of astronomical journals and data logs. A kitchen off to the left, small but functional. Hallway leading to what must be bedrooms. And everywhere, shadows. Not darkness. Shadows. Specific, deliberate, painted or projected onto walls in patterns that made Maya's eyes hurt when she tried to track them. Numbers counting down, 10, 9, 8, 7. Ethan found them immediately. Mama, look. The shadows count. He was right. In the front room, 10. In the kitchen, 9. Down the hallway, 8, 7, 6. Each number rendered in shadow that seemed too precise to be accidental, too deliberate to be coincidence. Sharon appeared in the doorway. She did that the last few months. Painted them, projected them somehow. The countdown she kept talking about. Nobody understood what it meant. Maya walked through the house, following the numbers backward. 6 in the first bedroom, 5 in the second, 4 in the bathroom, 3 in what looked like a storage room, 2 in a workshop space filled with equipment she didn't recognize, and 1. The number 1 was painted directly on the door to the observatory dome. Huge, impossible to miss, rendered in shadow that seemed to pulse even in stillness. What was she counting down to? Maya whispered. Whatever's behind that door, Sharon said. Nobody's opened it since she died. County inspector looked at the building structure, but didn't go into the actual observatory. Said it was specialized equipment, didn't want to damage anything. Ethan's hand found Maya's. Can we look? Every instinct screamed caution. This was too strange, too deliberate, too much like a trap set by a woman who'd been called crazy for years. But they'd come 1,800 miles. They had nowhere else to go, and Maya was desperately tired of being afraid of everything. Yeah, baby, we can look. The key labeled observatory slid into the lock. The door opened inward, and cool air rushed out carrying the scent of metal and old electronics, and something else Maya couldn't name. Inside, the dome stretched above them, massive and somehow still beautiful despite 12 years of abandonment. The telescope dominated the center, a beast of mirrors and gears and precise engineering that must have cost a fortune to build. But it was the walls that made Maya's breath catch. Every inch covered in data. Charts, graphs, photographs of deep space, mathematical equations that spiraled into complexity beyond anything she'd ever seen. And threading through it all, like a narrative written in scientific notation, the countdown. Helena had documented something, tracked it with obsessive precision, marked its approach over decades with data that universities had dismissed, that government agencies had ignored, that her own community had called delusion. And at the center of it all, covering the entire back wall behind the telescope, was a photograph. Deep space. A cluster of objects that shouldn't exist in formation, arranged in a pattern that made Maya's physicist-trained undergraduate brain scream that this was impossible. Beneath it, in Helena's handwriting, a single sentence. They're coming. The shadows count down from 10. When it reaches 0, look up. Sharon stood in the doorway, pale. Sweet Jesus. She really believed this. Believed what? Maya's voice shook. That something was coming. Something from out there. Sharon pointed at the photograph. She tried to tell everyone. Said she had proof. Said her data was conclusive. But who's going to believe that? Who's going to take seriously an old woman alone on a mountain claiming aliens or whatever are headed toward Earth? Ethan moved toward the telescope with the reverence of someone approaching something holy. His small hands touched the base, gentle and careful. It's amazing. Maya pulled out Helena's envelope, breaking the wax seal. Inside, a letter and what looked like a USB drive. Dear Maya, if you're reading this, you found your way here. I'm sorry I never knew you. Your mother and I had fundamental disagreements about life, truth, and whether hiding from hard realities made them less real. She chose comfort. I chose stars. The observatory contains 40 years of research documenting an approach pattern I've called the progression. Objects moving toward Earth in precise formation, counting down from 10 to 0. Every major research institution dismissed my findings. Claimed equipment malfunction, observer error, conspiracy thinking. I died before seeing 0, before knowing if I was right or if everyone else was correct that I'd wasted my life chasing shadows. The USB contains all my data. Raw numbers, no interpretation, no bias. Review it. Decide for yourself. And if you find I was wrong, at least you'll know I try to protect you from something I believed was real. The property is yours. The telescope is yours. The data is yours. Do with it what you will. But Maya, if the countdown is still happening, if it didn't stop with my death, please finish what I started. Someone needs to be looking up when the shadows reach 0. Your grandmother, Helena Vasquez. The letter ended there. No date for when 0 would arrive. No explanation of what would happen. Just a dying woman's plea to finish her life's work. Sharon had moved closer, reading over Maya's shoulder. Do you think she was right? I don't know. Maya looked around the observatory at 40 years of work condensed into this space. But she built all this, spent her whole life on it. That has to mean something. Or it means she was brilliantly, thoroughly wrong. Maybe. Probably. The rational part of Maya's brain said this was obsession, not observation. A lonely woman finding patterns in randomness, because humans were wired to see meaning even in chaos. But the irrational part, the part that had dragged her son 1,800 miles on faith alone, wanted Helena to be right. Wanted this inheritance to be more than an abandoned building and a crazy grandmother's delusions. Wanted there to be meaning in the countdown, purpose in the shadows, something that made the last 40 years of Helena's isolation worthwhile. Ethan was examining the wall of data, tracing numbers with his finger. Mama, these dates go up to this year. She wrote this just before she died. Maya looked where he pointed. The most recent entries were dated August 2024, just weeks before Helena's death. The final number in the sequence, 24 days to 0. But that had been 12 years ago. If Helena's countdown had been real, it would have reached 0 in September 2024. Whatever she thought was coming should have already arrived. Unless she'd been wrong about the timing. Unless the countdown was still happening on a different schedule. Unless 0 hadn't come yet. Sharon, check her watch. I need to get back. Are you staying? The question felt enormous. Were they staying in this strange place with its shadows and countdown and dead woman's obsession? Or were they leaving, admitting this had been a mistake, going back to... They had no apartment, no jobs, no anywhere else to go. We're staying. Maya heard herself say it before conscious thought caught up. At least for tonight. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. Sharon nodded like she'd expected this. There's supplies in town if you need them. Food, propane, whatever. Doctor's account at the general store still has credit. She prepaid years in advance. Just tell them Sharon said to put on Vasquez's tab. After Sharon left, Maya and Ethan explored the rest of the property. 3 bedrooms, one clearly Helena's, untouched since her death. Bed made with military precision. Clothes hung in the closet arranged by color. No photos, no personal items except a journal on the nightstand filled with data. Always data, never feelings. One bedroom was set up as a guest room, but looked unused. The third was some kind of office, more filing cabinets and equipment. The kitchen was stocked with canned goods, ancient but probably still safe. The pantry held supplies for someone expecting to be isolated for long periods. The generator worked when Maya followed Helena's posted instructions, and lights flickered on throughout the building. Solar panels provided enough power for basic needs. The well pump engaged, producing water that ran slightly rusty at first, but cleared after a minute. Propane tanks were half full, enough for heat through winter if they were careful. It was habitable. Barely. More than barely. Actually, it was ready for them. Like Helena had known they'd come, even knowing she'd never meet them. That night, they ate beans heated on the propane stove and slept in sleeping bags on the guest room bed because the sheets in Helena's room felt too invasive to use. Ethan fell asleep immediately, exhausted from travel and emotion. Maya lay awake, listening to the building settle, watching shadows move across the ceiling cast by moonlight through windows. The numbers haunted her. 10, 9, 8, 7, counting down to something Helena had died believing would arrive. Her phone buzzed, 1 bar of signal barely enough. Text from Brandon's lawyer. Failure to appear for custody hearing will result in immediate termination of parental rights. Return to New York within 72 hours or face criminal charges. She turned off the phone. They'd found her, tracked her somehow, but she was past caring. Let them file charges. Let Brandon tell a judge his son was living in an observatory in New Mexico. At least here, they had a roof. At least here, Ethan wouldn't watch his mother fail in real time. The shadows counted down from 10. And somewhere in the data filling this observatory, possibly, Helena had found something real. Maya wouldn't know until she looked. Wouldn't understand until she tried to finish what her grandmother had started. Tomorrow, she'd review the data. Tonight, she'd just survive having made it this far. Maya woke to Ethan's voice, high with excitement, calling from somewhere else in the observatory. Sunlight streamed through windows she didn't remember being so large, painting the guest room in shades of gold that felt wrong for 6 a.m. She stumbled into the hallway, following his voice to the main observatory dome. He stood at the telescope, hands hovering over controls he was smart enough not to touch, staring up at the mechanism with pure wonder. Mama, it still works. I think it does. The dome opened when I pressed this button. He pointed to a panel covered in switches. I didn't touch the telescope part. I promise. Sure enough, the dome had split open above them, revealing skies so blue and vast it made her chest ache. In New York, sky came in fragments between buildings. Here, it owned everything. We probably shouldn't mess with it until we understand what we're doing. Maya moved closer, examining the telescope's base. A plaque bolted to the mount. Celestia, 15, custom build, 1987. In memory of Isabella, who never got to see the stars. Her mother's name. Helena had built this massive instrument as a memorial to the daughter who'd refused to speak to her. The gesture felt too large to process before coffee. The kitchen yielded instant coffee that had expired in 2020 but tasted fine when mixed with powdered creamer from the same era. They ate granola bars from the pantry and explored with the fresh perspective morning provided. The filing cabinets held decades of observations. Helena's handwriting, precise, scientific, devoid of emotion, filled logbook after logbook. Each entry documented celestial coordinates, light spectrum analysis, velocity calculations, pattern recognition. Maya's undergraduate physics degree felt woefully inadequate to interpret this. She'd studied engineering applications, not astrophysics. Could recognize equations without understanding their implications. But even her limited knowledge screamed that Helena had been tracking something with obsessive precision. The USB drive from the envelope contained terabytes of data. Raw telescope feeds, processed images, mathematical models. Maya plugged it into Helena's old computer, miraculously still functional, and watched files populate the screen. A folder labeled Start Here contained a video file. Maya clicked it. Helena appeared on screen, filmed in this same observatory. She looked 70-something, gray hair pulled back severely, eyes intense behind thick glasses. The timestamp read August 1st, 2024. Maya. Helena's voice was rough and used as speaking aloud. If you're watching this, I'm dead and you've inherited a mystery I couldn't solve. I apologize for that. You deserved better than a grandmother who chased shadows instead of family. She adjusted the camera, moved back to reveal the wall of data behind her. 43 years ago, I detected an anomaly. 10 objects in deep space, arranged in formation no natural process could explain. Perfect geometric spacing, synchronized movement, and they were headed toward Earth. The image cut to telescope footage. 10 points of light, barely visible against the cosmic background. But when Helena overlaid trajectory lines, the pattern became unmistakable. Perfect formation, perfect spacing, moving in concert. I reported this immediately. Sent data to every major observatory, every space agency, every institution that might listen. They all said the same thing: equipment malfunction, observer bias, statistical anomaly. One review board suggested early onset dementia. Helena's face reappeared, expression bitter. Science is supposed to follow evidence. But when evidence contradicts comfortable assumptions, science becomes politics. I was alone, underfunded, outside the institutional framework. Easy to dismiss. She pulled up a chart showing the object's approach over decades. I've tracked them for 43 years. They move in pulses, periods of acceleration followed by apparent stops. The pattern creates a countdown. 10 positions, 9 transitions, 8 markers. They're not random. They're deliberate. The video cut to the wall of countdown numbers. I started painting these 5 years ago when I realized I wouldn't live to see 0. Each number represents a threshold crossing. They've passed through 10 positions. When they reach 0, they'll arrive. Helena leaned toward the camera, desperation finally cracking her scientific composure. I calculated 0 day for September 15th, 2024. I'll be dead by then. But Maya, if I'm right, if these objects are what I think they are, someone needs to be watching when they arrive. Someone needs to document first contact. The video froze on her face, then dissolved to black. Text appeared, all data files organized chronologically. Begin with folder 1987 to 1990 for foundation. Trust the mathematics, not the interpretation. See for yourself. Ethan had climbed into Maya's lap during the video, sensing this was important even if he couldn't grasp why. Was she right? Did something come? I don't know, baby. She thought it would happen in September 12 years ago. But we're in November now, and Maya gestured vaguely at the normal world outside the dome. Everything seems fine. Maybe she got the math wrong. Ethan's 7-year-old logic found the simple answer. Or maybe it's still coming and just slower than she thought. Maybe Helena had spent 43 years building elaborate delusion from observer error and confirmation bias. The mind found patterns everywhere if you looked hard enough. Faces in clouds, messages in static, meaning in randomness. But the data existed. Terabytes of it, meticulously organized. Maya had nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, no purpose except surviving until the next crisis. She might as well understand what her grandmother had died believing. She spent that day reviewing 1987 to 1990. Helena's initial observations, her methodology, her attempts to get verification from other astronomers. The responses she'd received were uniformly dismissive, increasingly annoyed as she persisted. Dr. Vasquez, your objects are likely instrumental artifacts or distant asteroids. The formation you perceive is statistical noise. Please stop contacting this facility. Ms. Vasquez, our equipment shows nothing at the coordinates you provided. We cannot waste time on unverified claims. Helena, I'm telling you as a friend, you're seeing what you want to see. Take a break. Remember what happened to Harrison when he went down this road. The last one stung worst. Someone who'd known her, cared about her, thought she was losing herself the way another astronomer apparently had. But Helena had just documented more rigorously, calculated more precisely, isolated variables until the signal rose above any possible noise. By evening, Maya had a headache and grudging respect for her grandmother's methodology. Whatever Helena had been tracking, she'd done it with scientific rigor that would shame most modern research programs. Ethan had spent the day exploring the property. He returned covered in dust, carrying rocks he'd found interesting and breathless reports of solar panel arrays, water tanks, a workshop full of tools, and a garden plot overgrown but possibly salvageable. They ate canned soup for dinner, played cards by lamplight to conserve generator power, and Maya tucked him into the guest room bed with his stuffed elephant while he asked questions about stars and objects that might be coming from space. If great-grandma was right, what would happen when they got here? I don't know. First contact, maybe. If they're alien spacecraft. She didn't say alien. She just said objects. He was right. Helena had been careful about interpretation, had stuck to observable facts. Objects in formation, moving with apparent purpose, approaching Earth. She'd never claimed to know what they were, only that they were real. Well, if they were alien spacecraft, I guess we'd try to communicate. Learn about them. It would change everything we know about the universe. Ethan considered this, face serious in lamplight. I hope she was right. It would be sad if she spent all that time looking for something that wasn't real. After he fell asleep, Maya returned to the observatory dome. The telescope was powered up. Ethan must have figured out the startup sequence. She should be upset about him touching expensive equipment without permission, but the pride of having a kid smart enough to operate a research-grade telescope at 7 overrode parental concern. She spent an hour learning the controls, referencing Helena's operation manual, familiarizing herself with the interface. Then she plugged in the coordinates from Helena's most recent observation. The telescope swiveled smoothly, gears engaging with precision engineering. The view screen displayed empty space, distant stars, nothing remarkable. She refined the focus, adjusted filters, compared what she saw to Helena's archived images from the same coordinates. Nothing. Whatever Helena had been tracking either didn't exist or had moved beyond range or had never been there in the first place. Disappointment surprised her. She'd spent one day reviewing data and was already half convinced by a dead woman's obsession. The human need to believe in something larger, to find meaning in inheritance beyond property value, to validate a grandmother's wasted life. She powered down the telescope, preparing to give up, when her phone buzzed with the last of its battery. Signal up here was sporadic, but occasionally present. Text from Carla. Brandon filed kidnapping charges. There's a warrant out for your arrest. Police came to my apartment. What do I tell them? The walls of the observatory suddenly felt less like shelter and more like trap. She'd known Brandon would escalate. He always did when he couldn't control something, but the reality of law enforcement involvement made her hands shake. She texted back, telling the truth. I inherited property. I have legal custody. I'm establishing residence in New Mexico. Not kidnapping. Carla's response came immediately. His lawyer is saying you fled jurisdiction to avoid custody hearing. Judge issued emergency order. Maya, they're serious about this. So, am I? Ethan stays with me. Her phone died before Carla could respond. Maya sat in darkness, listening to the building settle, and calculated how long before Brandon's lawyers found him here. Days? A week? However long it took to trace property records and inheritance paperwork. She bought time, not freedom. Eventually, she'd have to face court, prove stability, demonstrate she was fit mother and not desperate woman who dragged her kid across country to chase dead grandmother's delusions. The thoughts spiraled into panic she couldn't afford. She forced herself to stand, to move, to do something productive instead of drowning in fear. The workshop Ethan had mentioned, she'd check it out, see if there was anything useful. The workshop occupied a separate structure behind the main building, accessed through a covered walkway. Inside, tools hung on pegboards with the same precision Helena applied to everything. A workbench dominated the center, surface scarred from decades of use. But it was the back wall that made Maya stop breathing. A vault door. Massive, steel, the kind you'd find in a bank. Painted on its surface in Helena's careful hand. A circle divided into 10 segments, each numbered. And in the center, that same symbol from the envelope's wax seal. The countdown, rendered in metal and mathematics. Maya approached slowly, hand outstretched like the door might burn. A keypad beside the handle blinked green, waiting for input. 10 digits. Of course. Helena's obsession with 10 ran through everything. She tried the obvious. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Nothing. The birth date she'd found in Helena's journal. 051711941. Nothing. Coordinates from the initial observation. Nothing. The vault remained sealed, keeping whatever secrets Helena had deemed important enough to protect behind 10-ton steel. Frustrated, Maya returned to the main building. Ethan was still asleep, one arm around his elephant, face peaceful in a way it hadn't been for months. At least here, he slept without nightmares. Without hearing his mother cry in the next room. Without watching their life disintegrate in real time. That had to count for something. She made coffee, terrible, expired, perfect, and went back to Helena's data. If she couldn't open the vault, she could at least understand what her grandmother had been protecting. The 1990s folders showed Helena's methodology evolving. She'd started correlating her observations with other astronomical events. Solar flares, planetary alignments, gravitational anomalies. Building a framework that suggested the approaching objects weren't just moving through space, but responding to space, adjusting trajectory based on cosmic conditions. Intelligent navigation. Helena had written in a margin note dated 1997. Not ballistic, not natural. Someone is steering these objects. Maya's coffee went cold as she read. The data was compelling. Too compelling. Helena had documented course corrections that couldn't be explained by gravitational influence or solar wind. The objects moved with purpose, maintaining formation despite forces that should have scattered them. By the 2000s, Helena had built predictive models. Each folder contained projections for the object's next position, followed by actual observations confirming her predictions with frightening accuracy. She'd been right about their trajectory, their timing, their pattern. If she was right about those things, what else had she been right about? The 2010s showed desperation creeping into Helena's notes. She tried contacting NASA, ESA, private space companies, even amateur astronomer networks. Everyone dismissed her, some politely, most with irritation, a few with genuine concern for her mental health. Dr. Vasquez, we appreciate your dedication, but without peer review and institutional verification, we cannot pursue unconfirmed observations. Please consider submitting your work through proper academic channels. She had submitted through proper channels. Dozens of papers to peer-reviewed journals. All rejected. 2 extraordinary claims without extraordinary evidence, even when she provided the evidence itself. The final folders, 2020 to 2024, showed Helena racing against her own mortality. Her handwriting deteriorated. Arthritis, probably. Observations became more frequent, sometimes multiple per night. She'd known time was running out. August 10th, 2024, just days before she died. Final position confirmed. 0 day, September 15th, 2024. I won't see it, but the data is complete. Whoever comes after me will have everything needed to understand, to prepare, to witness. September 15th had come and gone 12 years ago. If Helena's countdown had been accurate, the objects should have arrived. But Earth was still here, oblivious, unchanged. No first contact. No alien arrival. No validation of 43 years of work. Just a dead woman's failed prediction and a granddaughter wondering if she'd inherited mental illness along with property. Maya closed the laptop as dawn broke outside. She'd been up all night, lost in a dead woman's obsession, and had nothing to show for it except exhaustion and more questions. Ethan woke to find her asleep at the desk, drooling on keyboard. He shook her gently. "Mama, there's someone here." She jerked awake, disoriented. "What?" A truck just pulled up. "A man's getting out." Through the window, Maya saw a county sheriff's vehicle parked in their driveway. A man in uniform approached the front door, hand resting casually on his belt near where his weapon sat. Her heart hammered. Brandon worked fast, faster than she'd thought possible. They'd barely been here 2 days, and already law enforcement had found them. The knock came, authoritative but not aggressive. Maya opened the door, trying to look calm, competent, not like someone who'd been up all night spiraling into dead grandmother's delusion. The sheriff was 50s, weathered in the way people who worked outdoors became. His badge read Sheriff Martinez. Maya Rodriguez? That's me. I'm Tom Martinez. Got a call from New York about a custody situation. Mind if we talk? This was it. The moment she'd been dreading. She could cooperate, explain, try to make him understand. Or she could refuse, escalate, turn this into the exact confrontation Brandon's lawyers wanted. Can I see the paperwork? The custody order or warrant or whatever you have. Martinez's expression shifted. Respect for someone who knew their rights. I don't have a warrant. Got a call from NYPD saying there might be a parental kidnapping situation. I'm here to assess, not arrest. Not arrest. Yet. My son is asleep inside. I have full legal custody. I inherited this property and relocated here. His father is using his lawyers to harass me. That may be true, but New York has issued a temporary order requiring you to return for a custody hearing. If you don't comply, they will issue a warrant. When's the hearing? Next Wednesday. 5 days. Maya's mind raced through calculations. Bus tickets back to New York would cost money she didn't have. Brandon's lawyers would eat her alive without representation she couldn't afford. The judge would see exactly what Brandon wanted them to see. Unstable mother fleeing across country to avoid responsibility. I need to establish residency here before I go back. Prove I have stable housing. Martinez looked past her into the observatory, taking in the countdown numbers painted on walls, the scientific equipment, the evidence of Helena's isolation. This is the old Vasquez place. My grandmother. She left it to me. Yeah, Cher mentioned you'd arrived. Whole town's talking about it. He shifted weight, uncomfortable with what he had to say next. Look, Miss Rodriguez, I'm not here to make your life harder, but I've got to file a report. And that report's going to say you're living in an abandoned observatory with countdown numbers painted on the walls, 20 miles from town, no visible means of support. I have means of support. I have property, resources. You have your grandmother's conspiracy theories made visible. His voice was gentle but firm. I knew Dr. Vasquez. She was brilliant and troubled and very, very alone. The courts in New York are going to hear about this place, and they're going to have concerns. He was right. Of course he was right. She'd fled one impossible situation into another, trading homelessness for isolation, eviction notices for countdown delusions. What do you suggest I do? Martinez surprised her by actually thinking about it. Get the kid enrolled in school. Establish routines. Clean up the weird stuff. He gestured at the countdown numbers. Or at least make it look less like obsession and more like, I don't know, art project. Show you're building stability, not running from it. And the hearing in New York? You'll have to go. Bring proof of this place. Proof you're creating a home. Get a lawyer if you can afford one. Fight for your kid the legal way. After Martinez left, Maya stood in the hallway staring at Helena's countdown. The shadows that had seemed mysterious yesterday now just looked insane. Evidence of a mind that had lost perspective, that had let obsession consume everything else. She couldn't live surrounded by this. Couldn't raise Ethan in a shrine to failure and delusion. Couldn't let Brandon's lawyers photograph these walls and present them as proof she'd lost her mind like grandmother before her. The paint was oil-based, permanent. Covering it would take primer and multiple coats. Money and time she didn't have. But leaving it meant surrendering to the narrative Brandon wanted to write. Crazy woman, crazy family, crazy inheritance. She found paint supplies in the workshop. Helena had been nothing if not prepared. Spent the next 3 days covering every countdown number in the main house with off-white that almost matched the original walls. Each stroke felt like erasing Helena, like declaring her life's work worthless. But Ethan deserved normal, deserved walls without obsession painted on them. deserved a mother who fought smart instead of running scared. Sharon visited on the third day, bringing groceries and gossip. Herb Martinez came by. Town's buzzing about it. Of course they are. Maya kept painting, not looking up. What are they saying? They are either brave or crazy for staying here. That the doctor's obsession might run in the family. That your ex-husband is probably right about custody. Sharon paused. And that maybe you deserve a fair chance before they decide. Generous of them. Small towns are like that. Judge first. Reconsider later if you prove yourself. Sharon set groceries on the counter. On the Vasquez account, like I said. You've got credit for 6 months of supplies if you need it. Maya stopped mid-stroke. 6 months. Doctor prepaid everything. Food, propane, even satellite internet service. She knew whoever inherited this place would need time to adjust. Sharon's voice softened. She prepared for you, even knowing you might never come. That's not crazy. That's hope. After Sharon left, Maya stood in the kitchen Helena had stocked for a granddaughter she'd never met. Prepaid supplies, maintained equipment, organized data, every detail anticipated, every need considered. Helena hadn't been delusional. She'd been meticulous, had created stability for family she'd never know, had built inheritance that served even if her theories proved wrong. The distinction mattered. That evening, Maya enrolled Ethan in Horizon Falls School online. The district accepted him immediately, 23 kids total in 3rd grade, small town desperate for students. He'd start Monday, riding the bus that came within 2 miles of the observatory. She called the New York court, confirmed the hearing date, requested remote appearance due to distance. Denied. She had to appear in person. Brandon's lawyers wanted her in that room, wanted the judge to see her disheveled and desperate and defeated. Fine. She'd go. She'd show proof of property ownership, proof of stable housing, proof she was building life instead of running from it. She'd fight. But first, she needed to understand what was in that vault. The workshop called to her. Maya stood before the sealed door, studying the 10-segment circle, the mysterious keypad. Helena had protected something, had deemed it important enough to hide behind steel and codes. The countdown numbers had been painted in sequence throughout the house. 10 in the entry, 9 in the kitchen, 8 down the hall, continuing to 1 at the observatory dome entrance. But the vault door showed all 10 segments at once, arranged in a circle. A clock, counting down to midnight. Or 0. Maya pulled out her phone. She found a way to charge it off the solar array and opened Helena's video again. Studied the background, looking for clues. There on the desk behind Helena, a notebook open to a page covered in calculations. She zoomed in, squinting at the numbers. They resolved into coordinates. Not celestial coordinates, terrestrial ones. Latitude and longitude. For this location, the observatory itself. And beside them, a date, September 15th, 2024. 0 day, the day Helena believed the objects would arrive. September 15th, 2024, had been a Sunday. Maya pulled up a calculator, started converting the date to different number systems. Decimal, binary, astronomical notation. Julian date, 2460568. She tried on the keypad. The vault remained locked. She tried the coordinates converted to degrees, minutes, seconds. Nothing. The inverse. Nothing. Every permutation she could imagine. Frustrated, she stepped back, staring at the 10-segment circle. In Helena's data, the objects moved through 10 positions. 10 to 1. But what if it wasn't countdown from 10 to 0? What if it was counting up in some system she didn't understand? She went back to the computer, pulled up Helena's trajectory calculations. Each position marker had associated numbers, distances, velocities, angles. She started noting them down, looking for patterns. Position 10, 4.7 billion kilometers. Position 9, 3.8 billion kilometers. Position 8, 2.9 billion kilometers. The distances decreased, but not linearly. She plotted them, looking for the curve. It was logarithmic, exponential decay as the objects approached Earth. She calculated the ratio between each position. Position 10 to 9, 0.81. Position 9 to 8, 0.76. The ratios themselves were decreasing, spiraling inward. A spiral. The objects weren't approaching in straight line. They were spiraling inward, counting down through a geometric progression. She calculated the final ratio, position 1 to 0, and converted it to a 10-digit number. Her hands shook as she entered it into the keypad. The vault door clicked. Mechanisms engaged. Bolts withdrew from housing they'd occupied for 12 years. The door swung open on silent hinges, revealing darkness beyond. Maya grabbed a flashlight, heart pounding so hard she could hear it. Whatever Helena had protected, whatever she deemed worth hiding, even from institutions that demanded transparency, waited inside. The vault was larger than the door suggested, extended back into the hillside, carved from living rock. Climate-controlled, dehumidified, maintained by systems that had run automatically for 12 years. The walls were lined with filing cabinets, each labeled with years. 1981 to 1985, 1986 to 1990, continuing to present. But it was the center of the vault that made Maya's breath catch. A safe, smaller, modern, digital keypad instead of combination lock, and taped to its front an envelope with her name. She opened it with shaking hands. Maya, if you've reached this vault, you've understood enough of my work to deserve what's inside. The safe contains something I never showed anyone. Evidence I couldn't publish without destroying credibility I'd already lost. Proof that I'm not delusional, just early. The code is the date you were born plus the date I died. Addition, then reverse the digits. What you find inside will change everything. Or confirm I wasted my life chasing shadows. Either way, you'll know the truth. Use it wisely. HV. Maya's birth date, December 3rd, 1996. 120-31996. Helena's death, August 14th, 2024. 081-42024. Addition, 201-76020. Reversed, 02067102. She entered the code. The safe clicked open. Inside, 3 things. A USB drive labeled classified, do not copy. A leather journal, edges worn from handling. And a bank statement from Cayman International showing an account balance of $512 million. $512 million. In her grandmother's name. Maya's vision narrowed. She sat down hard on the vault floor, bank statement clutched in hands that couldn't stop shaking. $500 million. Hidden in a safe. In a vault. In an observatory where a woman had died alone. Supposedly broke, supposedly crazy. The journal fell open to a bookmark page. Helena's handwriting, dated 2018. They paid me to stay quiet. $512 million to abandon publication, to stop contacting researchers, to let my findings disappear. They called it consultation fees for classified research. I called it what it was, a bribe. I took it because I was 76 and tired and knew I was dying. Because money meant I could prepare this place for whoever came after me. Because I could create inheritance that mattered even if the world refused to believe what I'd found. I documented everything. Every payment. Every communication. Every threat disguised as concern for my well-being. The truth is on the USB drive, encrypted, waiting for someone brave enough to make it public. They thought they were buying my silence. They bought my preparation instead. The countdown continues whether they acknowledge it or not. Whether I live to see it or not. Whether anyone believes me or not. The truth doesn't negotiate. Maya looked at the bank statement again. Account established 2018. Deposits from a corporation called Stellarm Holdings. Regular payments over 6 years, totaling more than $500 million. This wasn't inheritance tax-free because of observatory data sharing. This was blood money. Payment to make an inconvenient truth disappear. Except Helena hadn't let it disappear. She'd taken their money and built insurance. Had documented everything, encrypted it, hidden it in a vault only her granddaughter could open. And now Maya held $512 million and the truth about what had been paid to suppress. The USB drive sat in her palm, small and innocent, and probably containing information that would destroy people powerful enough to spend $500 million keeping quiet. She should be terrified, should realize she'd stumbled into something dangerous, something that ended careers and possibly lives. Should take the money and run, disappear, keep Helena's secrets buried where they couldn't hurt anyone. Instead, she felt something unfamiliar rising in her chest. Not fear, not even anger. Purpose. Helena had spent 43 years being dismissed, ridiculed, isolated. Had died alone with her work incomplete, her warnings unheeded. Had been paid to disappear and used that payment to ensure the truth survived her. Maya wasn't going to let that be the end of the story. She gathered the USB drive, journal, and bank statement, locked the safe, left the vault exactly as she'd found it, walked back to the main building where Ethan slept peacefully, dreaming of stars. Tomorrow, she'd take him to his first day at Horizon Falls School, would establish the routines Martinez suggested, would play the role of stable, responsible mother, building normal life for her son. But at night, when Ethan slept, she'd decrypt whatever was on that USB drive, would understand what Helena had discovered, would learn what truth was worth $512 million to hide. And then she'd decide what to do with inheritance that was equal parts fortune and weapon and grandmother's last desperate attempt to make her life's work matter. The countdown had reached 12 years ago. Helena had believed something would arrive September 15th, 2024. Maya was going to find out if she'd been right, and if the people who'd paid for her silence had been terrified she was. The school bus appeared at 7:15 a.m. like a yellow promise of normalcy. Ethan climbed aboard with his backpack and the nervous excitement of a kid starting over in a place where nobody knew him as the divorced kid or the poor one. Just Ethan Rodriguez, third grader who lived in an observatory and could name every planet's moons from memory. Maya watched the bus disappear down the dirt road, then returned to the vault. The USB drive had haunted her sleep. She dreamed of Helena's face on the video, saying first contact over and over until the words lost meaning. Had woken at 3 a.m. convinced someone was watching the observatory, only to find empty desert and stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. Helena's computer was old but powerful, built for processing massive data sets. Maya plugged in the drive and found it password protected with military-grade encryption. The prompt asked for a passphrase, not a code. She tried variations of Helena's life: birthday, death day, observatory coordinates, the dates of first observation. Nothing worked. 3 attempts left before the drive locked permanently. Think. Helena had been careful, methodical. The passphrase would be something meaningful but not obvious, something only family would know. Maya pulled out the journal again, searching for clues. Most entries were data and calculations, but occasionally Helena's humanity broke through. Isabella would have been 43 today. I wonder if she thinks of me. I wonder if she tells her daughter about the grandmother who chose stars over family. I wonder if that choice was worth it. That entry was dated May 7th, 2019. Isabella's birthday. Maya's mother, who died when Maya was 19, had been born May 7th, 1976. She typed, Isabella 051976. The drive unlocked. Files flooded the screen. Thousands of them, organized into folders with clinical precision. Communications, Stellarum Holdings Financial Transactions 3 at Analysis Observation Data. Classified contact, protocol arrival documentation. Maya's hand shook as she opened communications. Email chains between Helena and someone named Dr. James Carver, Director of Special Projects, Stellarum Holdings. The earliest dated 2016. Dr. Vasquez, your continued attempts to publish unverified observations have come to our attention. While we appreciate your dedication, we must ask you to cease contact with academic institutions regarding the objects you've been tracking. Stellarum Holdings is prepared to offer substantial compensation for your silence and cooperation with classified research protocols. Helena's response was 2 sentences. I'm not interested in being bought. The data speaks for itself. The emails escalated over months. Carver's tone shifted from polite request to veiled threat to overt intimidation. Dr. Vasquez, you must understand that publication of your findings would cause panic and destabilize global security. We're offering you $50 million to retire quietly. This is our final offer before we pursue other options. Helena, I'm 74 years old and dying. What can you possibly threaten me with? Carver, we can't threaten you, but we can ensure your granddaughter faces consequences for your stubbornness. Maya Rodriguez, currently residing in New York, working 2 jobs, barely making rent. It would be unfortunate if her employment situation became more difficult, if her custody arrangement with Brandon Carter came under scrutiny. The date on that email was January 2018, 3 years before Maya's marriage fell apart, before Brandon filed for divorce, before everything collapsed. They'd been watching her for years, using her as leverage against a grandmother she didn't even know existed. Maya's vision blurred with rage. She kept reading. Helena's next response. How much? The negotiation took 3 months. Helena pushed for more, claiming her silence was worth whatever terror they felt about her discoveries. Finally, $512 million, paid in installments over 5 years, in exchange for complete cessation of publication attempts, public statements, or contact with media regarding her observations. Helena took the deal. The journal explained why. I'm not selling my silence. I'm buying time. They think money will make me disappear, will make the truth disappear with me. They're wrong. I'm taking their bribe and building a fortress. The observatory will be maintained. The data will be preserved. And Maya will inherit everything. The evidence, the money, the choice they try to take from me. Let them think they've won. The countdown doesn't care about their fear or their payments. When zero arrives, the truth arrives with it. And my granddaughter will have the resources to make sure the world finally listens. Maya opened arrival documentation with shaking hands. Inside, photographs. Hundreds of them. Taken September 15th, 2024, timestamp verified, impossible to fake. The sky above the observatory filled with light. Not stars. Not meteors. Not any natural phenomenon Maya's physics degree could explain. 10 objects, exactly as Helena had predicted, arranged in perfect geometric formation, hovering at an altitude, the photograph's metadata, placed at approximately 400 kilometers. Low Earth orbit. The objects were massive, each one several kilometers across based on visual estimation against known satellite positions. They glowed with internal light, pulsing in synchronized rhythm that created waves of illumination across the night sky. Helena had documented their arrival minute by minute. 8:47 p.m. Mountain Time, first object appeared. By 9:15 p.m., all 10 were visible, maintaining formation, making no aggressive moves, but also making no attempt to hide. And then, at 9:47 p.m. exactly, they transmitted. Helena's equipment had recorded it. A signal broadcast on multiple frequencies, including visible light, radio, and something she'd labeled gravitational pulse that Maya's understanding of physics said shouldn't be possible. The signal, when processed through Helena's decryption protocols, resolved into mathematics. Universal language, the kind scientists had theorized aliens might use. Prime numbers, pi, Fibonacci sequence, then more complex information. A countdown, from 10 to 0, repeated over and over. A message, we arrived as scheduled. We are waiting. Acknowledge. Helena had tried, had sent responses using every protocol SETI had ever theorized, had broadcast acknowledgement, welcome, request for clarification. No response. The objects had maintained position for 6 hours. Then, at 3:47 a.m., they departed. Not slowly, instantaneously, like they'd never been there at all. Gone before anyone else could see them. Before anyone else could document them. Before Helena could prove she'd been right all along. The final photo in the sequence showed the empty sky, stars returning to normal, evidence evaporating like it had never existed. Except Helena had the photographs, the data, the recordings. Proof that first contact had happened exactly as she predicted, on September 15th, 2024, and the world had slept through it because one old woman alone on a mountain wasn't worth listening to. Maya found Helena's final journal entry, written hours after the objects departed. They came. They waited 6 hours for acknowledgement from someone with authority to respond. I tried, but I'm just one person with homemade equipment and a reputation for delusion. They left when it became clear no official response was coming. But the message was clear: they'll return. The countdown isn't over. It was just paused, waiting for humanity to wake up and notice we're not alone. I don't have proof anyone will believe. Photos can be faked. Data can be dismissed. One witness, no matter how meticulous, isn't enough. But Maya will have everything I couldn't provide. She'll have the money to hire experts, to commission verification studies, to force institutions to look at evidence they can't ignore. She'll have my work, my data, my lifetime of preparation. And when they return, because they will return, she'll be ready. Someone will finally be ready to respond properly. I'm sorry I couldn't finish this myself, but I'm grateful you exist to finish it for me. The entry ended there. Helena had died 12 hours later. Heart attack, alone, probably while processing the night's observations. The county coroner had found her 3 days later when Sharon noticed she hadn't come for groceries. Maya sat in the vault, surrounded by evidence that would change human civilization's understanding of its place in the universe, and understood the impossible position Helena had put her in. If she released this data, she'd be ridiculed, called fraud, accused of fabricating evidence for attention or money. Helena's reputation would poison her credibility, like grandmother, like granddaughter, both chasing delusions. But if she stayed silent, took the money, and lived comfortably, she'd be complicit in the same suppression that had isolated Helena for decades. The journal included contact information for Dr. Carver at Stellarium Holdings. Maya pulled out her phone, now charged and barely functional with satellite internet, and searched the company. Stellarium Holdings, Private Aerospace Corporation. Defense contracts. Satellite technology. Listed ownership was a maze of shell companies, but Maya recognized names from Brandon's corporate law world. People with power. People who could destroy careers, custody cases, lives. People who'd been terrified enough of Helena's discovery to pay $500 million for silence. She needed to understand what they knew. What made Helena's evidence so dangerous they'd rather pay than debate it publicly. The contact protocol folder contained Helena's analysis. The object's transmission hadn't just been mathematical greeting. It had included trajectory data, orbital mechanics, and something Helena called resonance mapping, information about Earth's position relative to something larger. Helena's interpretation: they're not invaders. They're messengers. Scouts, perhaps, for something else coming behind them. The countdown from 10 to 0 wasn't their arrival schedule. It was a warning about something else. Something bigger. Something that will arrive when the count reaches 0 again. But the count doesn't reset. It continues downward. 0 wasn't the end. It was a threshold. What comes after 0? Maya's phone buzzed. Text from Sharon. Ethan's school called. He's fine, but they need parent conference. Principal wants to meet you. 2 p.m.? Reality crashed back. She'd been so consumed by cosmic implications, she'd forgotten she had a custody hearing in 4 days, a son who needed her present, and a life that existed outside Helena's mysteries. She gathered the most crucial files onto a portable drive, locked the vault, and drove into town for the first time since arriving. Horizon Falls looked different in daylight, less abandoned, more resigned. People moved through their routines with the efficiency of those who'd been doing the same things for decades. They stared at her truck, Helena's old pickup she'd found in the garage, with curiosity that felt invasive. The school was a single long building that housed all grades K-12. Maya found the principal's office and was greeted by a woman in her 50s who introduced herself as Margaret Chun. Ms. Rodriguez, thank you for coming. Chin's smile was professional but warm. Ethan's doing well. Very bright. The science teacher is already talking about advancing him to 5th grade coursework. Then why the conference? Because he spent lunch telling the other children that his great-grandmother discovered aliens and he lives in a secret observatory tracking their return. Chin's expression remained neutral. The other parents are concerned. Of course they were. Maya had known this was coming, but had hoped for more than one day before Ethan's enthusiasm collided with small-town fear of different. His great-grandmother was an astronomer. The observatory is real. Ethan's excited about science. I don't see the problem. The problem, Ms. Rodriguez, is that Dr. Vasquez had a reputation in this town. And fairly or not, people worry about hereditary instability. Chin spoke carefully, clearly uncomfortable. Several parents have called asking if Ethan is safe to be around their children. The fury that rose in Maya's chest was immediate and cold. My son is 7 years old. He's brilliant and kind and excited about stars. If parents have a problem with that, they can keep their children away from him. I understand you're defensive. I'm not defensive. I'm angry. My grandmother spent 40 years being called crazy for doing meticulous scientific work. Now people want to punish my son because he's proud of her? Because he's different. Maya stood. If this school can't provide a safe environment for Ethan, I'll homeschool him. Chen raised her hands in a placating gesture. Please sit. I'm not asking you to withdraw him. I'm asking for your help managing expectations. Small towns operate on gossip and assumption. If you want Ethan to integrate successfully, we need to address concerns head-on. Maya sat slowly. What do you suggest? A parent meeting? Let people meet you. See you're rational and stable. Maybe give a presentation about the observatory. Make it educational rather than mysterious. Turn Dr. Vasquez's legacy into an asset instead of a liability. The idea had merit, but it also meant exposing herself to scrutiny right before the custody hearing. If parents decided she was unstable, Martinez would hear about it. Brandon's lawyers would use it. I'll think about it. Think quickly. The meeting's scheduled for tomorrow night. Chen's expression softened. For what it's worth, I think Ethan's wonderful. And I think this town could use some excitement about science instead of fear of anything different. Maya left the school and drove to the diner. Sharon was working the afternoon shift, refilling coffee for the same customers who'd probably been sitting in the same seats for decades. How'd the meeting go? Sharon slid into the booth across from her. They want me to do a parent presentation. Prove I'm not crazy like Helena. Are you going to do it? Maya pulled out her phone, opened one of Helena's photographs from September 15th. The sky filled with impossible light, 10 objects in perfect formation. What if I told you my grandmother was right? That she documented first contact and nobody believed her? Sharon studied the photo, face unreadable. Then she handed the phone back. I'd say that's either the most important discovery in human history or a very elaborate delusion. And the only way to know, which is to get experts to verify it. The people who paid her to stay quiet won't let experts verify it. They'll destroy anyone who tries. Then you have a choice. Stay quiet, take the money, live safely. Or fight them and risk everything. Sharon refilled Maya's coffee without asking. What would Helena do? She'd fight. Even knowing she'd lose, she'd fight. Then you already know your answer. That night, after Ethan was asleep, Maya started making calls. She used Helena's satellite internet to research astrophysicists, astronomers, SETI researchers, anyone with credibility who might be willing to review evidence. Most ignored her. A few responded with polite dismissals. One, Dr. Sarah Kim from UC Berkeley, responded with cautious interest. Ms. Rodriguez, I knew Helena Vasquez professionally in the 1990s. She was brilliant, but became increasingly isolated. If you truly have new evidence related to her work, I'm willing to review it. But I need to be clear, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. Photos aren't enough. Maya sent her a carefully selected subset of Helena's data. Not the arrival photos, not yet. Just the trajectory calculations, the observations, the meticulous documentation of 43 years. Kim's response came 6 hours later. This is remarkable. If authentic, this represents the most comprehensive tracking of deep space objects outside of institutional programs. I need to verify the data independently, but preliminary analysis suggests Dr. Vasquez's methodology was sound. Can we schedule a call? They talked for 2 hours. Kim was skeptical but intrigued, professional but increasingly excited as Maya walked her through Helena's work. When Maya mentioned the September 15th observation, Kim went quiet. You're claiming your grandmother documented first contact. I'm claiming she documented something. I need experts to determine what. If this is real, if there's any chance this is real, It can't be hidden. It's too important. People with significant resources want it hidden. They paid her $512 million to stay quiet. Kim's sharp intake of breath was audible. Who? Stellarum Holdings. Defense contractor. I have documentation of the entire transaction. Maya. Kim's voice shook. If you're telling the truth, you're sitting on evidence of the largest cover-up in human history. And you're in danger. I know. What do you need from me? Verification. Independent analysis. Peer review. Everything Helena couldn't get because one voice wasn't enough. I'll need the full data set. And I'll need to bring in colleagues. People I trust who won't dismiss this without examination. How long? 2 weeks for preliminary analysis. Longer for full verification. Maya had 4 days until the custody hearing. 2 weeks until Kim could verify Helena's work. And however long it took Stellarum to realize she'd opened the vault and found their secrets. The parent meeting was scheduled for 6 p.m. in the school gymnasium. Maya arrived early with Ethan, who'd insisted on bringing his plastic telescope and a poster he'd made showing the solar system. Parents filed in slowly, faces ranging from curious to hostile. Maya recognized the type. People who feared anything that challenged their understanding of how the world worked. Margaret Chin introduced her with diplomatic neutrality. Maya Rodriguez, Dr. Helena Vasquez's granddaughter, has agreed to tell us about the observatory and answer questions. Maya stood at the front, Ethan beside her, and faced the crowd. My grandmother spent 43 years studying the sky from her observatory. She believed in careful observation, meticulous documentation, and following evidence wherever it led. She was called crazy for that. I'm here to show you her work wasn't delusion, it was dedication. She prepared a presentation using Helena's less controversial data. Star charts, celestial mechanics, the kind of astronomy that was safe, educational, acceptable. But Ethan had other ideas. Great-Grandma Helena found alien spaceships. His 7-year-old voice carried absolute certainty. They came in September, and she took pictures, and they were real. The crowd murmured. Maya felt the meeting slipping away. A man in the back stood, Brandon Sutton, the one parent Chun had specifically mentioned as concerned. This is exactly what we worried about. You're filling your son's head with nonsense, making him believe fantasies. It's not fantasy. Ethan's face flushed with the passion of a kid defending something he loved. Great-Grandma had proof. Mama showed me the pictures. 10 ships in formation, just like she predicted. Maya. Chen's voice held warning. Perhaps we should stick to verified astronomical phenomena. But Maya was done hiding, done letting fear dictate truth. She pulled out her phone and projected one of Helena's September 15th photographs onto the gymnasium wall. The sky filled with light. 10 objects in perfect formation. Impossible to dismiss, impossible to explain. The crowd went silent. This was taken September 15th, 2024 at 9:47 p.m. Mountain Time. My grandmother documented it with 6 different instruments. The objects maintained position for 6 hours, transmitted on multiple frequencies, then departed. She tried to report it. Nobody would listen. This could be faked. Sutton's voice shook slightly. Photo manipulation. Digital effects. It could be. That's why I've contacted Dr. Sarah Kim at UC Berkeley to conduct independent verification. That's why I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to wait for science to do what it's supposed to do. Examine evidence without prejudice. A woman in the front row spoke up. If this is real, why hasn't NASA said anything? Why haven't we heard about it on the news? Maya took a breath. This was the moment. The choice between safety and truth. Because my grandmother was paid $512 million by a defense contractor to stay quiet about what she found. Because powerful people decided this information was too dangerous for the public to know. Because one old woman alone on a mountain was easier to silence than prove wrong. The gymnasium erupted. Parents demanding proof, shouting accusations, calling for Chun to end the meeting. But others leaned forward, intrigued, wanting to know more. Chun banged on the podium. This meeting is over. Ms. Rodriguez, my office now. In Chin's office, with Ethan waiting outside, the principal's professional mask cracked. You just made yourself a target. Those parents will call the county, the state, possibly federal agencies. And your custody hearing is in 3 days. I know. Then why did you do it? Because hiding helped Helena exactly 0%. Because Ethan deserves to be proud of his great-grandmother instead of learning to be ashamed. Because the truth matters more than my convenience. Chun studied her for a long moment. You're either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. That night, 3 things happened in rapid succession. First, Dr. Kim called. Maya, I've completed preliminary analysis. Helena's data is legitimate. The observations are consistent. The methodology is sound. And the September 15th event shows characteristics that can't be easily explained by conventional phenomena. I'm bringing in 4 colleagues for verification. We'll have a report in 1 week. Second, Maya's lawyer from New York called. The public defender assigned to her custody case. Ms. Rodriguez, Brandon's legal team has filed an emergency motion claiming you're mentally unstable and exposing your son to delusional conspiracy theories. They have affidavits from parents in Horizon Falls. The judge wants to move the hearing up. You need to be here tomorrow. Third, her phone rang from an unknown number. When she answered, a smooth male voice said, Ms. Rodriguez, this is Dr. James Carver. I believe we should talk about your grandmother's estate and certain complications you may have encountered. The man who'd paid Helena to stay quiet, who'd threatened Maya years ago, who was calling now because she'd opened the vault and spoken publicly about what she found. I have nothing to say to you. That's unwise. Your grandmother understood the sensitivity of this situation. She took appropriate compensation and lived comfortably in her isolation. I'm prepared to extend the same arrangement to you. Double the original amount. $1 billion in exchange for your silence and cooperation. You think I'm that easy to buy? I think you're a single mother facing a custody battle you can't win without resources. I think your son deserves stability more than you deserve to be a martyr for a cause nobody will believe. Carver's voice remained pleasant, reasonable. The offer expires in 24 hours. After that, I can't guarantee your safety or your son's well-being. The threat was unmistakable. Maya's hands shook with rage and fear in equal measure. Helena died rather than let you bury the truth. I'm not going to honor her by making the same mistake she didn't make. She hung up. Ethan appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Mama, who was that? Bad people who want us to be quiet about great-grandma's discovery. Are we going to be quiet? She pulled him into her lap, breathing in the familiar scent of his strawberry shampoo and kid sweat. No, baby. We're going to be very, very loud. But might get scary for a while. Are you okay with that? He considered this with 7-year-old seriousness. Great-grandma was brave even when people were mean to her. We can be brave too. Yeah, we can. The flight to New York left at 6 a.m. Sharon drove them to Albuquerque for hours through darkness and hugged Maya at the airport with the fierceness of someone who decided they were family. Whatever happens in that hearing, you come back here. This is your home now. Helena made sure of it. The courtroom in Manhattan was everything Maya remembered from the divorce proceedings. Cold, institutional, designed to make vulnerable people feel small. Brandon sat with his legal team, 3 lawyers in suits that cost more than Maya's annual income. He'd aged well, looked successful and stable, and exactly like the kind of father a judge would favor. Maya had her public defender, a harried woman named Lisa Chun, who'd reviewed the case file an hour before the hearing. The judge, Margaret Thornton, was 60-something with a reputation for cutting through bullshit. She reviewed the emergency motion with visible displeasure. Mr. Carter, you're claiming Ms. Rodriguez is exposing your son to delusional conspiracy theories and unstable living conditions. Brandon's lead attorney stood. Yes, Your Honor. We have affidavits from parents in New Mexico stating Ms. Rodriguez publicly claimed her grandmother documented alien spacecraft and has been paid hundreds of millions of dollars to suppress evidence. This is clearly delusional thinking that puts Ethan at risk. Judge Thornton looked at Maya. Ms. Rodriguez, would you like to respond to these claims? Maya stood, heart pounding. This was it. The moment where she either protected Ethan by appearing rational and dismissing Helena's work, or lost him by defending truth nobody would believe. She thought of Helena, alone on that mountain, watching the sky while the world called her crazy. She thought of Ethan's pride when he talked about his great-grandmother's discoveries. She chose truth. Your Honor, my grandmother was Dr. Helena Vasquez, an astronomer who spent 43 years documenting objects approaching Earth. On September 15, 2024, those objects arrived exactly as she predicted. She photographed their arrival, recorded their transmission, and documented first contact that nobody else witnessed because they refused to look. The courtroom went silent. She was paid $512 million by Stellarium Holdings, a defense contractor, to suppress her findings. I have bank records, email communications, and photographic evidence. This isn't delusion. This is documentation of the largest cover-up in human history. Brandon's lawyer recovered first. Your Honor, this proves our point exactly. Ms. Rodriguez is making wild claims about aliens and government conspiracies. I have UC Berkeley astrophysicists verifying the data as we speak. Maya pulled out her phone, called up Dr. Kim's preliminary report. Dr. Sarah Kim, who knew my grandmother professionally, has confirmed the observations are legitimate and the methodology is sound. I'm not asking anyone to believe me. I'm asking for time for science to examine evidence without prejudice. Judge Thornton held up her hand. Ms. Rodriguez, do you understand how this sounds? I understand it sounds insane. My grandmother sounded insane for 40 years. Until September 15th, 2024, when she was proven right and nobody was watching. Even if, and I'm not conceding this, even if your grandmother's work has scientific merit, you relocated your son to an isolated property, enrolled him in a new school, and immediately created controversy by making extraordinary public claims. That shows poor judgment regardless of the truth of those claims. Maya's throat tightened. She was losing, could feel Ethan slipping away because she'd chosen truth over strategy. Your Honor. Lisa Chun stood, surprising everyone. May I present additional evidence? Thornton nodded. Chun pulled out documents Maya hadn't seen before. Dr. Helena Vasquez's estate includes property valued at $2.3 million, fully paid. Solar power, well water, maintained infrastructure. Ms. Rodriguez has established stable housing with no mortgage or rent burden. Additionally, Dr. Vasquez's account at Horizon Falls General Store has $50,000 in credit for supplies. Chun continued. Furthermore, Stellarium Holdings has made documented offers to Ms. Rodriguez totaling $1 billion for consultation services, hardly something they'd offer to a delusional woman making false claims. The fact that multiple aerospace professionals are taking her seriously suggests her grandmother's work merits examination rather than dismissal. Brandon's lawyer sputtered. This is irrelevant. It's entirely relevant. Judge Thornton's voice carried steel. Mr. Carter, you claim Ms. Rodriguez provides unstable housing and has no resources. But she owns property worth millions and has been offered a billion-dollar contract. Those facts contradict your emergency motion. She turned to Maya. Ms. Rodriguez, I'm not going to rule on the validity of your grandmother's research. That's not my jurisdiction. But I'm going to rule on Ethan's well-being. Do you have the resources to provide for him? Yes, Your Honor. My grandmother ensured I would. And the custody arrangement Mr. Carter is seeking. Full custody with supervised visitation. Do you have resources to fight that? Maya understood what Thornton was asking. Could she afford lawyers who'd match Brandon's team? Who'd drag this out until the truth of Helena's work was verified or debunked? I can afford whatever legal representation is necessary to keep my son. Thornton nodded. Then here's my ruling. Current custody arrangement stands. Ethan remains with his mother. Mr. Carter gets standard visitation. This court will reconvene in 6 months to review stability and adjustment. She banged her gavel before Brandon's lawyers could object. And Mr. Carter, the next time you file an emergency motion in my court, make sure your facts are accurate. This hearing is adjourned. Outside the courtroom, Lisa Chun pulled Maya aside. How did you know I'd have those documents? I didn't. I hoped Helena's preparation extended to legal records. It did. She had everything filed, organized, ready for exactly this situation. Like she knew you'd need it. Shun paused. For what it's worth, I believe you. Or at least I believe your grandmother believed it. And I think that matters. They flew back to New Mexico that night. Ethan fell asleep on Maya's shoulder, exhausted from a day he was too young to fully understand, but old enough to know had been important. Maya stared out at the darkness below, at cities glowing like stars, and wondered what Helena had seen when she looked at Earth from her mountain. Had she felt protective? Frustrated that people refused to look up? Lonely in her knowledge? Sharon picked them up in Albuquerque, asked no questions, just drove them home through pre-dawn darkness. The observatory waited exactly as they'd left it. Solid. Real. Theirs. Over the next week, several things happened. Dr. Kim's verification team completed their analysis. The report was 247 pages of technical detail that concluded Dr. Vasquez's observations are consistent with non-terrestrial objects exhibiting intelligent navigation. The September 15th, 2024 event cannot be explained by conventional astronomical phenomena. Further investigation is warranted. The report was published in Nature with 6 peer-reviewed signatures. The scientific community erupted in controversy, but nobody could dismiss it as delusion anymore. 3 major news networks requested interviews. Maya declined all of them. This was Helena's story. It deserved to be told properly, not sensationalized for ratings. Stellarum Holdings lawyers sent cease and desist letters threatening litigation if Maya continued making defamatory claims. She forwarded them to Lisa Chun, who is now leading a class action lawsuit on behalf of 6 other researchers who've been paid to suppress similar findings. And the objects returned. Not to Earth. Not yet. But Dr. Kim's team detected them at position 8, the same location Helena had tracked them through decades ago. The countdown that had paused at 0 was continuing backward, or forward, or something that human understanding of linear time couldn't quite grasp. They're coming back, Kim said in their video call. Not on Helena's original timeline, but on a new cycle. And this time, people are watching. NASA issued a statement acknowledging anomalous objects of unknown origin and establishing a task force to monitor them. The UN convened an emergency session on first contact protocols. Governments that had dismissed Helena for decades suddenly wanted everything she'd ever documented. Maya gave it all to them. Every observation, every calculation, every meticulous note. This was what Helena had wanted. The world finally paying attention, finally taking the threat or promise or whatever those objects represented seriously. But she kept the September 15 photographs for herself. Those belonged to Helena. Proof she'd been right, proof she'd witnessed what no one else would acknowledge. Proof her life had mattered. 6 months after the custody hearing, Judge Thornton's reconvening happened via video call. Ethan appeared on screen, suntanned and happy, showing off a science project about exoplanets he'd built with classmates who now competed to sit with him at lunch. Your Honor, I like it here. Mama's happy, and we have friends, and I'm learning real astronomy. Can I stay? Thornton's smile was genuine. Yes, Ethan, you can stay. Brandon didn't fight it. His lawyers advised against further custody battles now that Maya's resources exceeded his own. He sent Ethan birthday gifts and called once a month, which was more than he'd done when they lived in the same city. The observatory became a research station. Kim's team used it for verification studies. SETI researchers set up equipment Helena would have loved. Graduate students came to learn from the archives of a woman who'd been dismissed for decades before being proven right. Maya hired staff to manage it, paid Sharon to run operations, created scholarships for students interested in astronomy, used Helena's money the way Helena had intended, to make sure Truth had resources to fight suppression. And every night, she and Ethan sat in the dome, watching the sky, tracking the objects that were definitely, measurably returning. What do you think will happen when they get here? Ethan asked one night, 9 months after they'd arrived. I don't know, baby, but we'll be ready to document it properly this time. Great-grandma will be proud of us. Yeah, I think she would. The countdown currently sat at position 5. Based on Helena's models and Kim's updated calculations, the objects would reach position 0 again in approximately 3 years. This time, the world would be watching. This time, someone with authority would be ready to respond. This time, Helena's 43 years of isolation and ridicule would be understood as the patient, meticulous preparation it had always been. The shadows didn't count down from 10 anymore. Maya had painted over them, made the house normal for Ethan. But she kept one, the number 1 on the observatory dome door. Reminder that Helena had reached 0, had witnessed arrival, had been right about everything that mattered. 2 years later, on a cold November morning, Ethan ran into the kitchen where Maya was making breakfast. "Mama, Dr. Kim just called. They're at position 2. They were coming faster now. The cycle accelerating. 3 years had compressed to 2. Maya grabbed her coffee and followed Ethan to the dome. The telescope tracked automatically, monitoring the approach with equipment far more sophisticated than Helena's original instruments, but using the same methodology, the same coordinates, the same meticulous documentation. The objects hung in space, clearly visible now, even to amateur equipment. News helicopters circled the observatory daily. Government officials called requesting briefings. The world had finally woken up to what one old woman had been trying to tell them for 40 years. Do you think she knows? Ethan was 12 now, voice starting to crack, but his wonder about the universe remained unchanged. Great-Grandma Helena, do you think she knows we finished her work? Maya thought about Helena, dying alone, believing she'd failed, believing nobody would ever validate her life's dedication. I think wherever she is, she's watching us watch them. And I think she's finally at peace. Position 1 came 6 months later. The objects hung at the same coordinates Helena had documented September 15th, 2024. The world held its breath. And on September 15th, 2026, exactly 2 years after Helena's documented first contact, the objects returned to Earth orbit. This time, Maya wasn't alone in the observatory. Kim's team was there. NASA observers, UN representatives, media from every major network, and Ethan, 13 years old, operating the same telescope his great-grandmother had built to document this exact moment. The object arrived at 9:47 p.m. Mountain Time, identical to Helena's photographs down to the minute. They maintained formation. They transmitted. And this time, humanity transmitted back. Maya didn't conduct the response that fell to people with PhDs and governmental authority and institutional backing. But she was there when it happened, when first contact became official, when Helena's 43 years of dismissed observations became the foundation for humanity's first conversation with non-terrestrial intelligence. The transmission lasted 6 hours, just like before. The objects shared information, mathematics, chemistry, physics, universal language that confirmed Helena had been right about everything. They were messengers. They were preparing humanity for contact with something larger coming behind them. And when they departed at 3:47 a.m., they left coordinates. A meeting place. An invitation. The world erupted in chaos and celebration and fear and wonder in equal measure. But in the observatory, Maya sat with Ethan and Kim and the documentation that Helena had prepared for exactly this moment. She knew, Kim whispered, reviewing the transmission data. She knew they'd come back, knew someone would need to be ready, knew her granddaughter would finish what she started. Maya pulled out Helena's final journal entry, the one written hours before she died. "I'm sorry I couldn't finish this myself, but I'm grateful you exist to finish it for me." She'd finished it, had taken Helena's dismissed observations and turned them into verified science, had used Helena's money to build infrastructure that supported rather than suppressed discovery, had raised a son who looked at stars with wonder instead of fear, had honored a grandmother she'd never met by proving her life had meant everything. 3 months later, they held a memorial service at the observatory. Scientists who dismissed Helena sent apologies. Institutions that had rejected her papers issued formal acknowledgments. The governor of New Mexico proclaimed October 14th, Dr. Helena Vasquez Day, in recognition of her contribution to humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. But the memorial Maya cared about most was simpler. She planted a garden where Helena had grown vegetables in isolation, set up a bench facing the stars, installed a plaque with Helena's own words. The truth doesn't negotiate. It waits patiently for someone brave enough to hear it. Ethan read the inscription and smiled. She was talking about you, Mama. You were brave enough. No, baby. She was talking about herself. I just had the privilege of proving she was right. They sat on the bench as sunset painted the New Mexico sky in colors that made Maya understand why Helena had chosen this place. The isolation wasn't loneliness. It was clarity, distance from noise that let you hear signal. Her phone buzzed. Message from Lisa Chun. Stellarum settlement finalized. $2.7 billion distributed to suppressed researchers. Class action successful. Your grandmother's documentation was key evidence. Maya forwarded it to the scholarship fund. More students deserving of resources to pursue truth without fear of suppression. The objects were currently at position -3, if negative numbers made sense in countdown context. Still approaching, still transmitting, still patient in whatever cosmic timeline they operated on. Humanity was preparing, building response protocols, learning to think beyond Earth-centric assumptions. Growing up, finally, into the universe Helena had always known was bigger than human stubbornness. And every night, Maya sat in the dome Helena built, using the telescope Helena maintained, following the coordinates Helena calculated, finishing the work Helena started. The shadows had counted down from 10. Hell, that was enough. That was everything. That was worth every difficult mile, every impossible choice, every moment of doubt that had brought them here. In the guest room that had become Ethan's permanent bedroom, her son slept peacefully. In the vault, Helena's data was preserved and accessible to researchers worldwide. In the bank account, enough remained to ensure the observatory would operate for generations. And in the sky, approaching at their own patient pace, the objects continued their journey toward whatever zero had always actually meant. Helena had left her granddaughter an inheritance worth $512 million. But the real treasure had been the truth she'd protected, the evidence she'd preserved, the mission she'd passed forward to someone who'd finish it. Maya pulled up the last video Helena had recorded, watched her grandmother's face, stern and certain and so alone, delivering her final message. Trust the mathematics, not the interpretation. See for yourself. She'd seen, had trusted the math, had followed evidence wherever it led, and in doing so, had transformed her grandmother from that crazy woman who died alone into the scientist who documented first contact and changed human history. The universe was bigger than anyone had imagined. Stranger, more beautiful. Helena had spent 43 years trying to make people look up and see it. Maya had spent 2 years making sure they finally did. The countdown continued. The objects approached. The future unfolded exactly as Helena had calculated it would. And somewhere, somehow, Maya believed her grandmother was finally at peace. Finally vindicated. Finally understood. The shadows had counted down from 10. But they counted towards something magnificent. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.